This is one of the fun things to do during the winter. This is the Brickworks in Toronto, and they have an ice rink which you can see behind me. So yeah, it's good to go around a couple of times, and it's free as well, so that's great. Lulu. You okay, Nick? Okay, so now we're going to make my favourite drink. It's not to everybody's taste. In fact, most people I know hate it, but I like it. As far as I'm aware, it's called a Southampton. So, we have 1 glass with ice. Take some bitters. I'll just take some bitters here. Just put some bitters in. Lime juice. Add a little dash of that, and then the last item is the, I'll get it in the camera, there we go, Canada Dry tonic, and literally that's it. One of the greatest drinks ever. I like it. Okay. Oh. Yeah. That is good. So one of the things I like to do at home is make my own bread. So it's you know, for me it's just something I enjoy doing. It's probably not everybody's taste, and yeah. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to quickly run you through it. In short, it's a 2-day recipe. So this is day 1, and it takes about a minute. And then tomorrow, which you'll also see in the same video, we'll go through and do day 2. And yeah, you'll see how easy this is. Okay, all right, so let's get down to it. All right. So the first thing that we're going to need is a container. This is just a standard 1 litre, I guess, maybe 1.5 litre Tupperware. Yeah, 1.5 litre Tupperware container. And I'm going to take a standard dessert spoon, and I'm literally just going to put 6 heaped, as you can see, heaped spoons in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some yeast. Oops, try and get it in front of the camera. There we go. So, just bog standard yeast, nothing special, none of that quick rise stuff, not special bread machine yeast. And I'm literally going to take 1 teaspoon, about that much, and stick that on top. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some water to it. So, I've added some water, and literally, just use the back end of the spoon, I'm just going to mix this around a little bit, and as you can see, it's coming together in a sort of a stodgy mess. It looks a little bit dry here, so I'm just going to add a little bit more water. There is actually a proper recipe for this, I will put that in the comments, but what basically you're looking for is just something that is sort of sticking together. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit gloopy, but what you don't want is for it to be too dry. So yeah, still adding just a little bit more water. Here we go. Right, so I've got this sort of consistency going. It's probably a little bit on the wet side now, but it doesn't matter. This will all even out. So that is basically all you do for day 1. I'm going to put a lid on top of it, but I'm not actually going to make it airtight. All the lid is there for is just to keep the dust and, you know, other detritus around the house out, dog hair or anything else that happens to be floating around in the air. So yeah, I'm going to leave this now at the side of the kitchen for 24 hours, and we'll come back to it. So here we are now, we're at day 2. So what we've got here is something that looks like this. And as you can see, it's a very sticky, tacky goop, and it smells just wonderful. It smells like beer. well, bready beer. All the yeast in there is basically breaking down the flour. You know, all the enzymes and the proteins and things, it's all being changed chemically. And this is the way that it used to be done in the old days. So you have this starter. Sometimes, you know, people call it a sponge. Sometimes people call it a starter. And yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to basically take this and turn it into bread. And as I said before, people, you know, they sometimes get a bit confused when I say that bread takes 2 days, but it doesn't actually take 2 days of my time. It's just that, you know, this took a day. So what we're going to start off with is a bowl, obviously. So let's, right, one big bowl, and this goop I'm just going to quickly throw into the bowl. Right. So now I have a bowl full of goop. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some flour, and I'm basically going to make this a white bread and just add a little bit of wheat germ to it. So I'll just take some standard wheat germ and just throw some on top. And now I'll add 450 grams of all-purpose flour. So for that we're going to quickly need a scale. Okay, tear everything off and go to grams, tear. Okay, so we're back to 0, so 450 grams. That's 200, 380, 448, okay, there we go. Just a tad over. Okay, so we've got that, 5 grams of salt. So I'm just going to throw some of this salt in. Okay. Next thing we're going to need is the water, so 270 grams of water, so I'm just going to throw that on top. And some oil. Now you can use butter or you can use olive oil. You can use any oil really, vegetable oil. I'm going to use in this case some olive oil, so I'm just going to add about 15 grams of that. Okay. And now, if I can find where I put my knife, there it is. Okay, I'm just going to basically move the scales out of the way, we don't need those anymore, and start mixing this all together. And yeah, as you can see, it's a bit goopy and stuff, but as it comes together, it will turn into some proper bread dough. And once it gets to a certain point, you can get your hands in there, but I just find it easier for scraping down the bowl and getting things at least started, just simply using a knife. You don't need anything in the way of fancy equipment here. Obviously people have been making bread for centuries before KitchenAids or other mixers came together. If you find that it's still a little bit too tacky, you can add some flour just to make it a little bit more, as you can see, where we're slowly coming together. Yeah, you can add some flour to make it a little bit more cohesive, smooth and less sticky. Yeah, this is going to need a little bit more flour. So there's the, yeah. Okay, let's put that there. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit of flour to this. Move this out of the way, don't need that anymore. And just roll it around, keep pushing it together. You want it consistent. You don't want sort of wet patches at one end, dry patches at the other end. Okay, here we go. I'll start speeding up a bit now. Roll some of this flour into it. Okay, I'm just going to add a little bit more flour because it's still a little on the sticky side. Okay. Yeah, it's not a lot of flour, it's maybe a handful. What you don't want to do is push it so far the other way that it becomes stiff and not easy to work with. This is perfect now. Now we just basically do this for 5 or 10 minutes. And if you look at it now, I'll fast forward in a second, but right now it's a little bit broken up. You can see that it fractures a little bit. It just doesn't look smooth, and what we want is smooth. Okay, so here we are a couple of minutes later, and I don't know if you can see this now, but yeah, when you try to pull it apart, it's a lot smoother. It's a lot more pliable. It's yeah, this is what you're really after, is something that is very, very malleable. When you stick your finger in it, it's sort of, you know, it doesn't go all the way through. It kind of bounces back a little bit. It's got some pliability to it. It's not sticking to my hands if I hold on to it for a long time. That's another way that you know if there's you know, too much water in it and you need to add some more flour. So yeah, this is basically what you're after. It's just a very, very smooth bread dough. So once we've got it to that point, what we can now do is take our bowl from earlier. I don't bother washing it out. That just adds extra work to the process. You don't need to do this. Just basically throw it in. If you want to put some, you know, spray oil or something around the edge, then you can. I don't normally bother with that. So yeah, just like that, I'm now going to put it in the oven. And the oven has been preheated just a little bit to about just over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And what I then do is just leave the light on. So it's going to go in there for an hour, and yeah, we'll come back in about an hour or so. Okay, so things have been in the oven for about an hour. My son has now decided that he wants to help me for the next step, so that's why we have him here. Right, so we pulled out of the, okay, can you move? Yep, there we go. We pulled out of the oven the bread, and as you can see, it's grown, it's about twice the size of what it was earlier. It might be a little bit dry on top, and that's absolutely fine. Once we, you know, roll this up and just quickly put it in the bread pan, what's going to happen is that will moisten back up, and the underside of this is still wet. Right, so do you want to pull this out, Nick? Yeah? Yes. Okay, let's try and pull this out. Okay, so we're going to just grab it like so. Yeah, pull it out. That's it. There we go. All right, so we've got our dough out. Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly punch.
Punch.
Yeah, let's just get some of the air out. Not all of the air, just some of it, but you'll hear it make a noise. Then stretch like this. Stretch like this.
I want to try.
Yep. Okay.
Stretch like this.
Okay, all right, not too much, not too much. And now,
stretch.
Oh, no. Okay, let's try that again. So stretch. There we go. Now, I'm going to put this inside a bread pan. And no, leave it alone now. So, what we're now going to do is put this back in the oven, and I will put a little bit of cling film just over the top to stop it from this point getting too dry. And yeah, we will come back in another hour. Okay, so it's been about, I don't know, 40 minutes. What I'm quickly going to do is just take a serrated knife, and I'm just going to score a couple of times diagonally along the top, and now this goes back in the oven. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes since I put the scores on the top of the loaf, and that's what it looks like now. As you can see, it's risen up a bit above the top of the pan. And what I'm now going to do is put it in the oven, 450 Fahrenheit, for about 10 minutes, and then drop the temperature down to 400 Fahrenheit for the remaining 20 minutes. So 30 minutes in total. And yep, we'll come back once it's out of the oven. Right, so now the bread is cooked. I will just get it out of the oven. And here it is. Well, it doesn't even fit in the frame here. So as you can see, it's grown quite considerably. If I come down, you will remember that it wasn't that much further above the top of the tin earlier, but now it's had a chance. I'm just going to get it out. So just give me a second. Okay, all right, let's get her up the right way. Now, if I bring this round, you can see here on the side there's a seam that runs all the way along the bread, and it actually goes all the way around the bread as well. So that seam, if it ever gets too big, it means that the bread wasn't proofed enough, it hadn't risen enough before it went into the oven. Every time you put a bread into the oven, it's going to grow, and what you don't want is for this seam here to spring too much that it actually tears the bread in half, because what's going to happen is when you go to cut that later, that will be the weak point where the bread starts to fall apart. So that's what you're really looking for, is something that's not so totally sprung that it's become unstable, but at the same time, yeah, that's a good looking loaf of bread. So I'll let this cool down, and later I'll be having this for my tea. So there you go, that's how I make my bread. It's not very difficult.